Uh, Getting things done from David Allen is, in my and many others' opinion, like the golden standard of personal project management. So first, we will walk through the steps of this framework, and then we will take a look at how you can start applying this in Notion. First, we will walk through some onboarding steps with Notion. So if you downloaded the template and created the account, as I sent in the email previously, you will be able to already start, populating your Notion with your projects, your tasks, and everything, so that you will be ready to kind of hit the ground running as soon as possible. But if not, you can, the steps, the onboarding process is described there, so you can follow it on your own later. So don't fret if you didn't get around to that. So first we will walk through the framework, then we will walk through the onboarding in Notion, and then depending on the time, we can go into questions or look at a bit more details,
Close
some
eyes.
back-end considerations of
Close eyes.
Notions. Yes, please.
Close eyes.
Oh,
Open eyes.
you're not
Ta-da!
talking to us. Hello. Okay, so are there any questions about the structure? If not, then I will start sharing my screen. And here it is. I actually decided, to really try to push the limits. I created the presentation in Notion, so this is already Notion. And these are the 5 steps of the Getting Things Done framework. So first one is capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. So we will walk through all of these one by one. Can you see the presentation, right? Great.
Can see it.
Perfect. So first step is capture. And I created this picture with AI of a monk, trying to empty his mind into a bowl. So, this cloud that represents, the tasks, all the things that you're thinking about, that you're trying to get out of your mind and into the trusted system, in this case, Notion. And David Allen, he has this great quote that your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. And that, to me, really encapsulates in a most compressed form, like the whole idea of getting things done. The whole idea is to create the trusted system where you know that you will find everything you need right when you need it. And when you do create this kind of system, you are able to become, much more relaxed, much more Zen-like. Like, it's actually David Allen who comes up with this monk-like martial arts metaphor for, managing tasks. He calls it mind like water. And to me, the first time I experienced this was a couple of years ago. The power of this, like, capture. A couple of years ago, when we were working with a few friends on a group project, and after one brainstorming session, I was coming home. I was feeling like very overwhelmed and stressed. I didn't know where to start. It felt like we can never manage all of this on time. But in a flash of insight, I decided just to, capture everything, write everything down on a piece of paper. I didn't even have any fancy tools back then. But, just write everything down. And when I did, immediately after that, like, all the overwhelm, all the stress was gone. Like, suddenly I could just look at the paper, look at all the tasks written there, and I saw, okay, this is doable. I was able to, like, prioritize, decide what's most important. And, suddenly it was clear that this is manageable, right? So this, like, calm state, this is how you want to feel basically all the time, right? You don't have to feel overwhelmed if you're able to capture all the so-called open loops, like everything you have to do or should do or want to do in the trusted systems outside of your head. As was the quote, your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. System is for holding them. So this is the calm of no open loops. When you're able to capture it there, like you are, yeah, you will not feel as overwhelmed. You will become much more relaxed. And the key habit that you need to develop for that is the habit of instantly writing down everything and capturing it in the system. Any open loop, any kind of system, anything that feels like, that starts with the words like I should, or I have to, I need to do this, I need to do that. All these things, all the things that you're trying to keep track of, you need to get into the habit of actually like capturing them in the system as soon as possible. And of course, to be able to do that, you need to create ways that allow you to do it both quickly and conveniently, right? So if it's too difficult, as with any habit, if it's too difficult, we won't do it. So it's really important to have ways of doing it easily. And in my experience, like Notion can serve this purpose very well. But about that later. So this is the capture phase. Then the next, once you did capture something, first the monk was just, trying to capture the cloud in the bowl. Now what he's doing is like he's taking the cloud and trying to process it into these like clear, well-defined blocks. Like these are supposed to represent like individual tasks. And so clarify is about, taking those quick reminders, because that's what the capture step is about. Like you don't need to think about it too much, just create some reminder, just get it out of your head. In the clarify step, you are taking it one step further and actually trying to define, okay, what is this, right? That's the key question of this step. Like, what is this? What does this mean? And the key distinction here is between tasks and documents and potentially events, because tasks are something actionable, right? Something that you can do, whereas documents, they are more, something for you to reference, something that you want to be able to find later, but they don't necessarily like imply any action. And then events, they are a bit standalone category because events you usually want to capture in your calendar, all right? Not necessarily in like your project management system. So David Allen explicitly says that, yeah, events belong on the calendar, not in the system, and vice versa. Like you shouldn't put tasks on your calendar. So this is one thing, but this distinction is quite clear. Usually you just know, okay, this is a task, this is a document, right? So this is usually clear enough, but when you identify a task, what is the key, action to take during this clarify stage is to define two things. First is what does done look like, and the second is what is the first action that I need to take. And why is this important? When you have a lot of tasks, there's this, I'm not sure which law it is, but like work tends to expand all time that's available to it, the saying. And that becomes much more pernicious when you don't know what done looks like, right? Because most tasks, they can always be improved somehow, right? You can always make it a bit better, work on it a bit longer. And especially, if you have a lot on your plate, you need to become very clear, like, when will this be done? When do I say, there's also this saying with art, right? Art is never finished, it's only abandoned. Well, you can start treating, definitely certain projects can have the qualities of art in a certain way, right? In the way that, yeah, it's never like done. It's kind of only abandon. So you need to become clear on what does done look like? Like, what is the outcome that you're shooting for and that you will be satisfied with? And then perhaps even more importantly, what is the first action you need to take? That's about actionability, right? Because technically, you cannot actually work on a project, right? I used to, for example, this workshop, like prepare this workshop. That's not something like I can actually do. I have to break it down into smaller steps that give me a clear idea of like what will be the very first action that I need to take. In my case, the first action to take was to create a sign-up form, and then prepare the slides, prepare the structure, all these things. And when you are able to do this, you remove a very sneaky, very important source of procrastination, which is this aversion that like, I don't know where to get started, right? If you don't know where to get started, you will not feel like you want to actually start, because it feels overwhelming. Like an often given example is, clean out your garage. Yeah, no one wants to do that, right? But mostly because it's like such a huge task and you have no idea where to get started. So a great trick for this is, when you don't know how to get started, the first step is to actually plan, how will I get started? So with the garage, it could be, okay, just go into the garage and have a look at it and decide what will I take out next. And then you might define, okay, so next time I will take out, this trash or this old machine or whatever. Start breaking it down into the very first action that you can take. You don't have to identify all the actions that will go into the whole project, but just, what is the first actually actionable action, something that you can imagine yourself completing in one go. That's the idea for clarify. And then the next step is organize. So now, having processed the amorphous reminders into specified, clear tasks, the monk is now, putting them into place so that he knows where to find them. And here, I use two core frameworks, Getting Things Done and Para. This is from Tiago Forte, but they are somewhat adapted because both of these frameworks were originally created for tools where like the things could only exist in one place, so you had to decide, is this a project? Is this an area? Is this whatever? But with tools like Notion, it becomes much more flexible. So it's actually a adapted version of these two frameworks. And in this organized phase, the three core properties, let's say, that you're trying to define for each task is first the bucket, like where does this belong to? So we have projects and areas, right? Projects are sequences of tasks with a clear outcome and usually also a clear deadline, right? So when you come up with a new task, you want to assign it to a project. So beforehand, you should have a list of projects that you're working on. Whereas areas, they don't have clear outcomes and definitely not deadlines. Areas are more like areas of responsibility in your life where you're trying to maintain a certain standard over long time, over indefinite time horizon. So areas are actually, they should together be covering your whole life, or at least all of the parts that you want to track in Notion or any other tool that you would be using. So areas could be something like marketing, it could be product, but it could also be health, relationships, all these, areas. You want to track them and have a list of them in the tool that you're using so that any task that comes up, you can assign to it, right? And then, of course, also projects can belong to areas. And then we have topics, but topics, those are only for documents, right? Because sometimes when you get a document, like some interesting article, oh, okay, it can be relevant to a project. Like maybe you're redesigning your website and it's like 5 tips for, captivating website design. You could also assign it to an area, something like marketing, long term, so that you have it available later. But even if you're not working on it, maybe it's covering some psychology, and psychology is not even an area nor a project, but it's still something you're interested in, right? So you want to have another bucket for these like non-actionable things that you still want to, save for later because they might be useful or just because you're interested in them. So that's the bucket, like the big overarching type of what it is. Then there's status. And here we drill down even more into like the actionability, right? And so the 3 core properties of status are waiting, active, and later maybe. And of course, the 4th would be done. But waiting, that simply means, okay, this is not something you can make any progress on because it's waiting on something out of your control, a reaction from someone else or something like that, some external event. Then active, those usually I find that the best definition of what active means is these are the tasks and projects that I want to work on this current week, right? If it's past this week, it would create like too much clutter. There would be too much things on your plate. So things that you want to work on later than this week, you want to hide for later or maybe. So yeah, when you want to work on something next week or even after that, or when you even don't know whether sometime you will want to work on it, but you just want to be remembered, like, hey, I had this idea, maybe I could do this, right? That's this 3rd category or 3rd option. And then the final property, or several properties actually. One is priority, that's quite clear, like how important is this task? And then context, that's several things. Like it can be, do I need a lot of energy? Do I need to be very focused? Or is it something that I can, listen to music to or talk with someone? Is it like low focus? Do I have to sit at my computer, or can I do this on my phone? Do I need a lot of time or less, or only a little time? Things like this. So that would be context, which allows you to then quickly pull up tasks like, okay, let's see the task that I can do on my phone. And you would only pull up the tasks that the context you specified as mobile, right? So those are the 3 key properties: buckets, what overarching category does the task belong to, status, and priority and context. Now, having defined all this, there's another key step, and that's actually reflect. And here the monk, he's looking into the plan for the temple that he's trying to build. He has like here, these are supposed to be like the building blocks that that he collected in the 3 previous steps, and considering like how do they fit into the building of this whole structure that he's trying to achieve. And reflect, it's called actually a critical success factor. It's very much about this like greasing the wheels, like making sure that the system is like staying on track, that everything is working as it should, making sure that everything is up to date, and that you can still trust the system, because that's not something that can happen on its own. That is something that you need to like intentionally set the time for, and do methodically create a process out of this reflecting. And so what does reflecting actually entail? Well, the main critical success factor that David Allen talks about is actually a weekly review. And weekly review, it can happen any day. I usually do it like Sunday evenings or Monday mornings, but some people do it on Wednesdays. Doesn't really matter. but it's important that it's very regular, ideally once a week. And this is your opportunity to first make sure that everything in your inbox is processed, right? And then you can also have a look at all the things that you defined as later maybe and decide, okay, do I want to work on this next week, right? So this is how you can trust that even if you marked something for later, you will be able to see it when it becomes relevant again, right? Because you defined, okay, I will reconsider working on this at this date, and at that date, you have a look at the weekly review, and there it is, right? Reminding, okay, I wanted to work on this now, so okay, I can move this into active. And weekly review is also an opportunity for you to take stock of the previous week and decide what did you actually do? Like how much progress did you make on your goals? What do you want to improve? Things like that, right? So it's ideal if you are able to couple it with a like very fast daily journaling practice that can really augment the value of the weekly review. And another core element of the weekly review is, as alluded to with the image, progressive planning and goal setting. So, and actually during the weekly review, you would be reviewing on your longer term goals, right? So you can have goals for a whole year or even longer, like vision. But I usually work at least for like yearly goals and quarterly goals, monthly goals, and weekly goals. And so during the weekly review, I would take a look at the weekly goals that I set a week before and set new goals for the next week, right? And try to align them, like how can I best make progress towards the bigger goals, towards the monthly goals, towards the quarterly and yearly and even longer goals, right? So it's this opportunity to kind of align your actions with your longer term goals. And of course, I wrote this progressive planning because then, even though weekly review is by far the most important one, it can be, again, greatly augmented if you, once a month, you do a review of all the weeks, right? And then once a quarter, you do a review of all the months. And once a year, you review all the quarters. And in Notion, you can create, I think, a very elegant system for making this very effortful. You know, it doesn't take too much time, too much effort. And you are able to really notice the progress that you've been making and evaluate all the, let's say, improvement suggestions that you left as reminders for yourself. So weekly review, it really, and all the other reviews are really essential elements. And of course, setting the goals, because as Seneca said, if you don't know which port you're sailing to, then no wind is favorable. So you want to make sure that you have articulated your goals and then regularly reflect on the progress that you've been making. And that brings us to the final engage phase. Here the monks, you know, having reflected on the goals, like making sure, okay, this is the path for the next week, they actually start building, move on with the projects at hand, right? And here, even though David Allen actually doesn't recommend create a daily plan, for me, it was kind of like a final puzzle piece, when instead of just having a big list of tasks that I want to work on during the week, you know, in the morning, taking just a couple minutes and just very quickly identifying, okay, today I will do this, and, you know, just very few priorities that give you the focus during the day. Because when you don't do it and you just come, when you want to sit down to work and you just are confronted with the whole list of tasks, can be, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, depends on how you treat them, right? But for me, it's usually about 20, which is way less than, let's say, 100, but it's still a lot. And having to, whenever I would sit down to work, having to like look at that list and choose, okay, what's the most important right now? That in itself created like so much friction that I would procrastinate way more than after I learned to actually batch this decision making. If you heard about batching, you know, like these small actions that you need to take, just do them all together in one batch. Daily plan is an instance of that, and it's an instance of decision making about what to work on. You just batch all your decision making about your work to the morning, and then when you sit down, you have a clear plan. Okay, what did I want to work on now? Bam, and you can just instantly get into work. So that's a great little tweak. And yeah, it provides a focus and intuition that mostly refers to the fact that, you know, even with the daily plan, obviously things happen. Not all the things will go according to plan. So intuition very much has its place during personal project management. Like, you know, just noticing, okay, I planned to work on this, but now there's this opportunity or this urgent thing to do. So of course you are allowed to work on that. So you don't have to sweat it too much. And you definitely can use your intuition. But again, daily plan provides much bigger focus in my experience. And that wraps up the 5 steps of the getting things done framework. So in capture, you know, you're trying to get rid of all the open loops, capture all of them instantly as soon as they appear in the system. And so you need a quick and convenient way of doing that. Then in clarify, you are trying to have a look at those reminders that you captured in the first step and decide, okay, what is this? Is it a task, document, event? And especially, when will the thing be done if it's a task? And what, even more importantly, what is the very first action that I need to take? And actually, these 2 steps, in practice, they are often kind of combined, right? Because when you would be capturing something in a Notion, you can already phrase it in the way that the first action you need to take is clear, right? Instead of working, prepare the workshop, I can definitely, you know, already think like, okay, the first thing would be, create the sign-up form. So over time, I think you can get much more efficient with the clarify step and kind of combine it with the first one. But then once you did clarify it, you still need to organize it with the 3 key properties being buckets. So what is the overarching category that this task belongs to? What is its status? Is it waiting? Do you want to work on it this week or at some point later? And what is its priority and context, like energy? Then you reflect, that's the weekly review, you know, making sure that everything is up to date. And setting plans, setting goals, reviewing the progress you made before. And then engage. Then the final, you know, daily plan on the very morning, and using intuition and focus to get things done. So that's the framework. Are there any questions? I will maybe stop sharing so I can see you.
Yeah, hi. No questions from my side, just having to remember all those steps and being able to write down like the actions, like you said. I think that's really important. But then having to always determine what is a task and what is like supposed to be done. Not so easy for some of us.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I probably didn't emphasize this enough, but you know, the only thing that you need to do when you realize, okay, this is something that I have to do, you just that's when you just create the quick reminder, right? And that can take like few seconds, 2 seconds. You just write it down somewhere in the system that you're using, Notion preferably, right? And that's it. You don't have to like start thinking about, oh, what this, what that. Like all these steps, they would hardly ever take place at the same time, right? Usually like capture, capture happens, and then you just get back to the previous task, right? Like it very often happens that I can be focusing on some thing that I'm working on, and I remember, oh, I still need to do that. And so I would just like very quickly, 5 seconds, write down the thing that I remembered, and immediately I go back to the task that I was working on, right? So it doesn't break my focus, but it still allows me, to get rid of the thing that was like nagging in the back of my mind. And I can leave it there for quite a long time. To be completely honest, I usually only process the inbox during the weekly review, actually. Even though David Allen, he recommends, doing it whenever you can. In my experience, unless it's like a very urgent task, like it works just fine if I process it during the weekly review. And that is a time that I have set aside every week to make sure that I do have the time to go through the steps, so it doesn't feel like I'm rushed. And it doesn't feel like I have to remember something, because like the system, the way it's built in Notion, it's reminding me of all this. So even though it can sound a bit overwhelming, actually in practice, like you only need to remember to capture things. And that can take only very few seconds. And then the rest, the system should be reminding you of those next steps. Yeah, but great question or comment. Anyone else want to share something? If not, then I will start sharing the screen again. And we will move onward and onboard. It's a terrible wordplay, but I hope you will forgive. Now we're moving on to the template that I shared with you yesterday. So if you have it ready, now is the time to open it. Actually, can I ask, can you just like text me, like, will you be following along with the template, or should I just give demonstrations? Because if you are ready to use the template, then I will give you time at each step to actually, try what I'm showing. But I wouldn't want to, slow things down if no one would actually be working on the steps right now. So can you just let me know whether you will be great. Yeah. So Martin, let me know. What about following? So you will be working through the template, right? Not just watching, but actually following the steps, right?
Yeah, I'll probably just watch. You're going to share the recording with us later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Then I can go back and do it in a more slow, easier pace.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I'll just walk through it then. Perfect. So again, just to recap, this is on the home screen of the template that I shared. This is, well, I tried to make it as, noticeable as possible, because previously I got feedback that, people didn't notice it. So here, read me getting started, like those are the onboarding pages. Here is something if you want to import data from other tools, but we won't be doing that. So let's move straight into the onboarding pages. Here, none of these are mandatory or required, but they are the like helpful tools that go along with Notion browser version that I think greatly enhance, the usefulness of Notion overall. So there's the Notion desktop app. That's actually what I'm using here, but you can also use it in browser. There's Notion on mobile, which is especially helpful if you want to, capture things quickly on the go, or even look at things quickly on the go. There's Notion Calendar. That's a recent release. We can have a look at that a bit later. And then Notion Web Clipper. This is a wonderful way to capture things from the web, like let's say an article, directly into Notion with one click. But you can set these things up later on your own. None of it is complicated. So for now, let's move on to adding goals and habits. So, in the getting things done framework, we only got to goals and habits and planning and reviews in the fourth step. But when you kind of approach project management from the beginning, right, you would usually the most natural place to start is actually defining the goals that you want to work on. So that's why this is the first page. And the way it works in this template, like goals ideally should be assigned to these weeks, months, quarters, years. Days are mostly for reflecting, so you don't have to set daily goals, but you do set a daily plan. But we'll get to that later. But as I was talking about in the reflect phase, you have this progressive planning. So by far, and progressive reviewing, by far the most important is a weekly review, right? And setting, let's say, weekly goals. But you can also, if you want, set monthly goals, quarterly, yearly. And the way we would do that is we would click this button, create like a new weekly review page, right? And here, this is supposed to be, or this is the date when the time period, these are all, I call them time periods throughout the template. So weekly, monthly, time, they are all time periods. So this is the start date of the time period. And it automatically sets to the date when you create the page, which in this case isn't the first date of the week, right? So to make sure that everything's working properly, we need to change the date. So yeah, we just hover over that, click it, and change the proper date to Monday. And then let's say we also wanted to add new month, like set monthly goals. So if we did it for March, that would be 1st of March. Also, I really recommend setting this naming convention, name of the year and then kind of name of the time period. So with weeks, I usually just use number of the week, so week 13. With months, it would be, of course, year and the name of the month. So 2024 March. Yes, and you can also, as I said, set the quarterly and yearly goals, but we won't do that right now. The process would be exactly the same. So once you have the time period page, you can just click the new goal and it will create and open the page. And the only thing you want to do right now is just, name the page as the goal that you're trying to achieve. So for me, it would be this week, it was prepare the workshop. Then if you want to add more goals, let's say, yes, 2 would be enough for now. And if I wanted to do some monthly goals, well, now it would actually be time to start setting goals for April. But let's say, I don't know, could be something like prepare another workshop. Yeah, and so you can just add the goals you want. I recommend definitely not more than 5, because the goals, they specify your priorities. So 5 is the very maximum. I usually go with 4, and then you can start seeing this summary of the goals here on the page of the time period that the goals are assigned to, right? So once you created all the goals you wanted for all the time periods that you wanted, then in the next step, you just assign the priority, and that's all you need to do. So finish the client build. For me, this week was the most important, preparing the workshop. Finishing the client build is the second priority. Preparing another workshop will be top priority for, well, April, but now it's assigned to March. And as you can see, now that we assigned a priority here on top, like they are already indicated, like what's the priority of each of the goals. And these are some leftover pages that are probably in your templates as well. So you can just delete those. Now, having defined that, this might actually also be a very last step, but it also makes sense to address this now. When you have defined the goals, there's also an important step of deciding what habits will let you achieve those goals, right? James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, has the saying that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems, by which he mostly means habits. And so in this template, I built like a very simple habit tracker, a way of reminding yourself and reviewing every day, like how well did I do on this habit? Like did I follow this habit or not? So you have these 3 predefined habits. And so you just need to click all of them, click the title, and actually rename them to the habit that you're tracking. So for me, it would be my habits. Some is meditation, taking supplements, and let's say learning languages. I have more, but for now, that's enough. If you want to add more, you can just right-click one of these, just click duplicate, and now we can something like, again, just rename it to the habit that you're tracking, so you can create as many as you want. And then here, to make sure that you're able to see all these, you need to hover over this card, or rather here on top, the 3 dots, and here you go into properties, and you make sure that any habits, anything with this like checkbox item is or icon is shown there. So we added journal, so I need to find it here, and I click this I, and now it's visible here. See? And these other items, those are my kind of journaling prompts that you can use, you can adapt them, you can ignore them, but I have found them very helpful. And so what I would do every evening is then I would click this edit, and I can check, all the habits that I did do, and then fill out these properties. So what was great, running the workshop, what sucked, I don't know why this skipped. You get the point. Just fill out anything that comes to mind. You don't have to fill out all of them, and you can be super brief, just again, leave yourself reminders. But then during the weekly review, you will be able to see these things that you filled out for every day. And that then becomes, very valuable as you're able to gather these insights from each day into the weekly insight, and then from weeks into months, and from months into quarters, from quarters into years. So it really, starts compounding. So I strongly encourage this like daily reflecting journaling practice. Okay, once you're done with that, now we get to the core of what you need to set up for this template, and that's projects and tasks. So as we covered before, first, there are these areas of responsibility, these most general, areas of your life that you want to track in Notion. So I already predefined 3, and I wanted to predefine them because I also created nice cover images for them, as you will see later. But you can add as many as you want. You could add, let's say, something like product design or whatever. As I mentioned, like they should together, the areas should be basically covering your whole life, or at least all the parts of your life that you want to keep track in Notion. And if you want to add sub areas, you can either click this button, and that will, after a few seconds, create a page here, and that would be, let's say, website. And now we can see, next to the marketing, we can see this like toggle arrow. And that means that it has a sub item website. Or we could have just, if we wanted to add it without clicking this button, then we can hover over here to the left, and we will again see the button and just click the new sub item and personal, let's say, relationships. Now, again, just to process them, we need to define like what's the priority. So let's say this is top important, relationships are middle, marketing, of course, is top, but website I'm kind of neglecting for now. Finances, that's more like an administration at this point. Product design, always important, right? So now we have our areas. So we can move into tasks and projects. And that works very much the same. We can simply start adding, I don't know, prepare. Yeah, for this week, it would have been prepare the workshop. And again, we have this add new subtask. I will do it this way because it's a bit faster. I will create the sign up form. And so on. You get the idea. And now here, all these columns, right? This is how the organize step is instantiated in Notion. So, first we had the bucket property, and that is already handled, by assigning tasks under this project, right? So in this case, the prepare the workshop would be the project, and these are the sub-steps, like the individual tasks. I like to define this with this scope property and say like, okay, this is a small project, which I define as, more than 5 hours, but finishable within 1 work week. So that would be a small project. And these are quite big tasks. I don't think I would have finished them within 1 hour. So I like to define this scope. But then even more important, of course, is the status. So I will set this as active, and just to show you how it all works, I will set this to later, maybe. And priority, well, that's again quite straightforward. Low. Now plan for, when do you want to do? This is not a deadline that has a separate property, but when do you want to work on this, right? And here you can also set end date if you anticipate that it will take more than 1 day, and set it as a interval. So create a sign up form maybe here and prepare the slides. Well, let's say between here and here. Deadline only when there is an actual deadline. So this time there would have been, but to speed it up, we will ignore that. Now in areas, we already see the areas that we added in the previous step, right? So that's great. So this all would have been marketing. And now follow-up and prerequisite, this becomes relevant for projects. If you want to see dependencies between projects, kind of a Gantt chart, you can start assigning these two properties like follow-up and prerequisite. So let's say if I could only work on the slides after I created a sign-up form, I would have said that, okay, the follow-up is prepare the slides, and now it should mirror here in a little bit. And then context, as we covered, that's some other considerations like high energy. The others may be low energy. And finally, and when you're done, just click processed. Okay, this is done, or not done, but done with organizing. Now it's processed. That's it. Any questions so far? We're almost at the end of this onboarding, but this was the core page. So if you have any questions, if I should show something again, please. Okay, I'll take it as everything being clear so far, so we can move on to the final onboarding step, and that is adding topics of interest. And those would be similar to areas, but just for documents. So in this case, maybe it would have been something like psychology, I don't know. Yeah. And again, we could add subtopics, so something like motivation or whatever. Simple enough. And this time we don't even need to define priority. We will just, again, check it as processed once we're happy. And then if we had any documents, say motivation, we could say, this becomes quite useful sometimes. So web article, that's the most important. Video podcast, quite straightforward. These first three with the icon, those are like your own documents that you're creating, right? So quick note, some idea that you had, some thought that you want to explore, working document, for like documents, like drafts of stuff, meeting notes, and then tool, it's not quite an article, but when you find a useful tool that you want to store, you can also track that in Notion. But this would have been an article, let's say saved. Let's say I already started skimming it, and let's say I really, for the documents that I really want to get to as soon as possible, I can also define the priority, and most importantly, define the topic. So this would be motivation. And if it was relevant to any project, then I can also assign it to area or task. I call it tasks because projects are actually tasks consisting of other tasks, right? So tasks and projects, they are not the same, but I see tasks as kind of being superordinate. If you want to have it in the pinned view, you can check that. So maybe let's do that, and then again, processed. Curious. Now I'm actually not clear why it didn't disappear. Oh, area. Okay. No, it should have disappeared. Oh, strange. Okay. Now that was for the onboarding. And so we can have a look at the master dashboard uh where it all comes together. And that will be, well, your kind of homepage if hopefully you do make Notion your core system for organizing everything. So here on the top left, we just have some quick actions. With this, you can quickly add new tasks, or there is actually even a shortcut. You could press Command N or Control N if you're a Windows user. And that would, for me, it doesn't quite work because if I show you, if I press Command N, it automatically assigns it to this database of mine. And that shouldn't happen. Like you should get a pop-up. Like actually, I think if you press the button, the shortcut, the add new task, add new note, you should get a pop-up where you're able to define where do you want to add the item, right? So if you press the Command N, this is already in the task database, but if you did the Command N, you can choose, okay, is this a task? Is this a note? So it's a very flexible way of adding new items. So that's actually how I would what I was mentioning during the Q&A, right? Let's say if I'm working, can you see Mentimeter now? Well, let's say you do. Let's say if I'm working on something else in some other window, and I remember, okay, I need to do this, then I just quickly swipe to Notion. I just press the Command N, and I just capture it very quickly. It takes a few seconds, and then I know that I will find the thing here later. But anyway, those are shortcuts. And then walking from top to bottom, here we have the areas, right? And if we open them, this is why I wanted to, keep the predefined ones, just to demonstrate that, don't underestimate making Notion pretty. It can make it even more, enjoyable to work with it. Here we see like an overview of projects and tasks assigned to it and the priority of the area. More importantly, when we open it, the page, we can see the tasks that we assigned here and the notes that we assigned, but only those that belong directly to marketing, right? So this is another way of making sure that you find the things you need when you need them, right where you need them, right? So here I only see the task assigned to marketing because we created these kinds of filters here, and apparently I was assigning every sample task to marketing, but area contains marketing. So here we only see the task belonging to marketing, and we can use this nice view with Kanban to just drag and drop it to, let's say, waiting, or actually make more sense to move it to active and so on. And also here on top, we have views of our tasks, either weekly or monthly. And here we have view of all the active tasks, or primarily active. Like we have today's tasks, which we have active. I probably won't walk through all of these, but roadmap is why I was mentioning the dependencies, right? Like the prerequisite and follow-up, or follow-up and prerequisite. As you can see, now we have this like dependency button. So yeah, prepare the workshop. Oh yeah, it was here. Create a sign up form, and we said that preparing the slides is the follow-up, right? So now we can see the yeah, that this is the duration that we expect it to take, and yeah, this needs to happen first. If we wanted to see it in more detail, we can switch month into week. Yeah, and so that's the roadmap. Here, in later maybe we'll see all the tasks that we said are not yet done, or that we don't want to work on yet, then done for tasks that we finished recently and that we didn't move into archive, because actually there's one more status option than I mentioned so far, and that's archived. So when you press a button, when you say that, okay, this task is now done, it changes the status to done and moves it here to the done tab, create a sign up form. And now we have two options. We can either delete the task to kind of keep the database, clean. But if we want, for some reason, to store it for later reference, we can also just archive it. And then we will see it in some kind of archive view. Actually, two more things that I want to show you. One is creating the daily plan, right? So let's say today morning, as I was reviewing all the tasks that I have here, I was deciding, okay, what do I want to actually work on today? Like, I planned this for today, I planned this for even earlier, but actually, what do I want to really finish today? And so when I find those tasks, I just click do today and do today, which hides them from this view for a bit and moves them here to the daily plan. And here I can, place them to the time period buckets when I actually want to work on the task. So we have early morning, kind of before 9, and then there's forenoon. And yes, that's an actual word, which is for me between like 9 and 12. Early afternoon, let's say 12 to 3, 3 to 6, and then anything between 6 and when you go to sleep. So you can very easily, very quickly create a more detailed plan of the day. And then when you sit down, you don't have to look at all the tasks that are here, which when you do start using it as your system and you would have all your tasks here, that can be a bit overwhelming, right? As I said, for me, it's usually like 20 tasks, so it can be quite a lot. But if I do in the morning, prioritize, okay, what will I actually work on today? Then this view becomes much simpler, much less cluttered, and it's much clearer. What do I need to do? And then again, when I'm done, I would just click it and it moves it to the done view. So that's the daily plan. And then here we have inbox. So all the tasks that you create with either this shortcut or the add new or documents even, you will find them here. And again, you can just walk through the steps of the organizing that we covered before. And even lower, we have the documents and the topics that we assign to the documents. So everything is here, right on one page. And here on the left, we see the weekly goals that we set for this view, or that we set for this week. You can also switch it to the monthly, quarterly, or yearly goals, whichever you find to be the most relevant. And here we have the daily note that we set up earlier. So here you can also track the habits and, review your day. And there are, yes, 2 more steps that I want to just quickly cover. We have 14 minutes, so that just about adds up. So the first is actually setting up Notion calendar, because you can then use Notion calendar. We saw how it's important to have easy ways of capturing new tasks, right? And so the calendar, because it's Notion calendar, it integrates with Notion. So now we have a way of even more easily entering things here. And even though it's not the core of or it's not, the getting things done methodology actually recommends not having things on your calendar, but some people just swear by time boxing, right? And so you can also put your tasks in your calendar and then view them here alongside all the meetings that you have. And the way to do that is when you sign up for Notion calendar, then you move here to the personal workspace section and you click add Notion database. And in your case, you will find this PZ for Project Zen, tasks and projects, and select this calendar inbox view. Now we have it here. And let's say I wanted to send you all tomorrow. I will actually do it later today or at the end of the workshop, but and we can just move it from meetings to the tasks and projects. And now we have a task here that appears in our calendar, but it should hopefully also appear here soon. Send the feedback format. We already have okay, it filled it out to deadline, but never mind. Yeah, and so this way we can easily capture things from the calendar and then process them further in the Notion and assign them to projects. So that's quickly setting up the calendar. And then we talked about the weekly review being the core or critical success factor, right? So we can either access it from here, or we could go to the goals and reviews page. When it's time to do the weekly review, we just open the page and follow the steps that are on the template. And those will walk you through what you need to do, what you need to review during the weekly review. So we would just click the current weekly page. Or because this view, always shows like the current view. So on the next Monday, this page will no longer be visible here. So if that happened, and if you didn't make it to do the weekly review, then you would need to find it in the all time periods. But yeah, here, first you would plan the week, just walk through the steps outlined here. Here's also when you can define the goals. And as you can see, we see the goals that we defined earlier. Schedule the tasks. And then when it comes time to actually review the the previous week, you would just walk again through these steps outlined here and make sure that everything is up to date. And that's it. It was, I believe, quite intense, quite maybe even overwhelming 80 minutes so far. But I was trying to, pass on as much as I can about personal project management in Notion. So I can stop sharing now. I will stop recording.